is going on? Oh, that's what's going on. Hang on. Haha! All right, everybody. We're live. I forgot to hit a specific button that makes us in frame and production value here at Load the Box. I'm back inside of a basement, coming from you live, looking like. Is it too soon to say looking like an Osama bin Laden video where it's like dark and it's dusky and dusty and it's like grimy. I'm gonna try and make it look like an actual like studio down here. It's all in the works. My name's Jordan Hawthorne. I'm joined as always by the marvelous, the wonderful, the extravagant, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jack H. Day. Jack H. Day. I feel like the last 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, have just been chaos. They have just been strictly chaos. It is that scene from SpongeBob where you zoom into SpongeBob's brain and they're just throwing papers into the fire and everyone's running around like chickens with their head cut off. Vikings Twitter right now is the wild, wild west, and everyone's dueling. Everyone's got a take. Everyone's got an opinion. Kevin O'Connell's not the coach. He is the coach. He's Josh McDaniels all over again. Let's put it all away. One question, same question I ask every week. Jack, how's your week?
It's been good. Like you said, it's been rather eventful, but I didn't fully buy into that yesterday, and I don't think you did either. I think we were in the same party of kind of just let's pump the brakes on this a little bit. Like I know it's Minnesota. I know it's Minnesota sports, and more in particular, it's the Minnesota Vikings, and usually you have to expect the worst, but that wasn't the case. Officially announced today that Kevin O'Connell was the head coach. I had some confirmation from within that said, you got to stop worrying. His nameplate's already on his door. So that was a little sigh of relief when I heard that, but then obviously still waiting for the official announcement with the tweet that came out today. I think it was this morning at some point. It's a good feeling. And I like that they didn't force him to come into Minnesota and do the press conference and do all this flying back and forth. He's flying in, doing his press conference tomorrow at 4. Glad he was able to enjoy. I mean, you don't get that chance to win the Super Bowl. Vikings fans are very aware of that. That opportunity doesn't roll around every year. So let the guy live his life, enjoy the Lombardi Trophy, get a little drunk on whatever that is, avocado tequila. I think that's what Tom Brady was drinking. Did you see that? This is kind of off topic, and if you're new to the show, that's normal. Tom Brady tweeted at Matt Stafford saying, make sure you have a little bit of water. I think he was speaking from experience on that, getting off that. The Tampa Bay boat parade last year was a little bit of a scene, you could say, for Tom Brady, which made me respect him even more. I thought that was hilarious. And yes, I even invested in a shirt with that picture on it. But I'm doing well. And I think there's, of course, the day that something's confirmed with the head coach and everyone's freaking out the day prior. Of course, another news bomb has to drop in the Vikings world with the Deshaun Watson news, which we will get into. But overall, I've been doing well, and I'm looking forward to the new era of Vikings football.
Yeah, it's going to be super duper interesting to see what free agency and the draft brings this way. If Cousins is not dealt before free agency, he's staying, I think. I think, like, if they're gonna create all that cap space, they're gonna want to use that cap space to sign. There's a few good offensive linemen in this draft class, in this free agency class that the Vikings will be competing with my hometown Cincinnati Bengals to get. We kind of talked before the show. We don't think the line is that far off. Now, granted, two out of 5 is almost half, so it's off, but I think that there's a good chance the Vikings, through free agency or even through a little bit of homegrown talent, are gonna fix at least one of those spots with Wyatt Davis, who we kind of joked off air about. 2 years ago, Drew Samia was gonna come in and he was gonna fix everything, and then we started. Last season it was Ali Udo is going to come in. He's going to fix everything. So far, the guard position for Vikings offensive linemen is similar to the quarterback position, where the backup is the fan base's favorite player, it seems. But like you said, I'm excited to see what the future's gonna bring. I'm gonna leave it up to you on what Odo. I get. We should probably go head coaching news first,
Yeah,
right? That
let's. I
seems
mean,
like the
it'll probably be
biggest.
it'll be pretty quick too, because I
Yeah,
don't think
I'll
it's
let I'll
anything
let you kick
drastic.
that off. What we covered this last week too. We talked and we speculated because nothing was signed and nothing was on paper, and there are still some Vikings fans that they don't think he's the head coach until they see him during spring training blowing a whistle or whatever. What are your thoughts on O'Connell? Again, we've done this before. We've had this conversation. But to kind of rehash it quickly for the folks that didn't catch last week's show.
Yeah, I think it's a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I think that's the best way to look at it because the Minnesota Vikings desperately needed change. They needed and more change than I think I was even aware of. Like throughout the season, I think it was pretty obvious that if they don't make the playoffs, make some sort of run, the Mike Zimmer era was going to come to an end. I didn't personally see that being Rick Spielman as well. But I also didn't really realize the amount of baggage that this team had between Mike Zimmer and between Rick Spielman. And when that all kind of started to come out, it's like, okay, this was the right decision. This front office needs fresh eyes at the GM position and at the head coach position. And I'm excited. It's going to be an offensive minded head coach he's 36 years old. It's extremely young. I think he is the head coach that I'm pretty sure probably 50 to 60% of the fan base has been calling for the last few years. I know the Jim Harbaugh news happened, and then that kind of pulled some people into that side of the spectrum. We're not going to know, quite frankly. We can't be like, you know what, Kevin O'Connell, he is going to be the best head coach in Vikings history. We can't make that assessment until 3-4 years down the road and see what has actually happened with this new regime. But I think what we can expect to see is a more exciting offense. And it's not saying that Kevin O'Connell is going to come in here and he's going to throw it 90% of the times, because the Vikings fans that want that to happen, that's not realistic. There's still a really good running back on the team in Dalvin Cook that will be able to establish the run. Not sure if it's going to be as much outside zone as this team has traditionally ran in the past. It'll be interesting to see if they can kind of get some of those more traditional, like beefier offensive linemen, if you will, instead of the athletic prototype that the Minnesota Vikings of the last decade have tried to build. But I think you see some of the stats. There's going to be more 11 personnel. That opens up the field more. The tight end position, Irv Smith Jr., that's going to be an exciting thing to follow, not only throughout the offseason, but when we get into training camp in the preseason, because he was the talk of training camp in 2021. So excited to see him get healthy back out on the football field with a new head coach that I think is going to tailor the offense to his needs a little bit more. And it opens the door for guys like a KJ Osborne, who we just saw emerge in 2021. Amir Smith-Marset started to come onto the scene as of late at the end of the year. This is the best I've felt about a wide receiver room on this Vikings, probably in the last 5-10 years or so. I know there was a great room there when it was Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Jarius, right? But the future of this wide receivers room is in good hands. And I know Adam Thielen, we talk about this, it feels like every other show, he's getting up there in age, but he's proven you and myself both wrong, kind of saying, you know what, maybe he's going to slow down this year. That hasn't happened yet either. So I'm extremely excited about the offensive side of the ball. He does have his work cut out, him and Ed Donatel, rumored defensive coordinator for the Vikings, that will more than likely bring a 3-4 style scheme change. That side of the ball has a lot of work to be done, quite frankly. I'll be blunt, because there's not only holes in the starting 11, there are holes in depth. I don't know if we've been proven enough to say that Troy Dye and Chaz Surratt are good enough backup linebackers. There's no depth at safety. When I say there's no depth at cornerback, that's because the starters right now are Harrison Hand in the slot, Chris Boyd, and Cameron Dantzler. After that, there is absolutely no one. I guess there are some guys that are practice squad or bounce up and down between the active roster, but there's nothing there on the defensive side of the ball. And that is the biggest focal point for me personally this offseason. I retweeted a mock draft that I saw that had the Vikings going cornerback, linebacker, and defensive end in the first 3 rounds. I would not be shocked to see that, because this defense, like I said, needs so much work, and it's going to have to find talent not only in the draft but through free agency. And I was talking about this on my show earlier as well. Someone commented and said they might have to take more of a approach that the Cincinnati Bengals took, with cut ties with some of these veterans and bring in some free agents that aren't old, but in their mid to late 20s that can kind of hopefully revitalize the defense that is just it hasn't been what it was in 2017. It hasn't been close to that, quite frankly, and it's been frustrating because the offense has been good enough, but the games when the offense is good, I've said this probably a million times on this show already. When the offense is good, the defense is bad, and when the defense is good, the offense was bad, and it was frustrating to see. We're going to need to see more continuity out of this regime. And like I said, I'm just looking forward to it. And I think that the Vikings fan base should be extremely, extremely excited to finally have their new head coach coming into the building tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, 10th head coach in Vikings history, Kevin O'Connell. The show's Twitter, it was me, tweeted yesterday, to try and calm the nerves of Vikings fans, talking about how, he's probably drunk and high. Let the man pouty and just, get weird and sloppy, I think is the way I put it. And let him have a good time. And he'll put on that nice winter coat and a nice suit. And he'll come and he'll do a press conference as the leader of the Minnesota Vikings, hopefully for years and years to come. There's some, he's bringing some guys from LA with him. So if you've been impressed with the way the Los Angeles Rams have been coached on either side of the ball, specifically the offensive side of the ball, though, then I think you should be really excited about what changes are coming the Minnesota Vikings way. Starting with Wes Phillips, who's coming over to probably be like the QB's coach. Everyone thought he was going to be OC. Now there's another name. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's another name that's coming up. Do you know?
Thomas Brown. He's the running back / assistant to the head coach, I believe.
And so he's coming over, and he's probably going to be coming over to be the OC. So, it's just crazy to me. One thing that should have every Vikings fan just over the moon excited is the way the league is going now. If Kevin O'Connell, let's say, rolls Cousins out there next season, and the offense is a top 10, top 5 unit, like it has the potential to be, our offensive coordinator gets poached, it doesn't matter. Kevin O'Connell is the offense. He's the genius behind the scheme, if you will. Even if it all goes back to McVay, and then McVay's from somebody's, you know how the NFL works. But legitimately, I think the Vikings fan base should be incredibly excited about this guy. He's handsome. I think a majority of people would say he's more handsome than Mike Zimmer. I think Mike Zimmer has his niche, and apparently that niche is supermodels. But I think he's gonna do great things. I think that, like you said, you kind of covered it all, man. Like, you can't expect this team to now just come out and run the air raid Texas A&M offense. We're still gonna run the ball, but we're gonna get a little bit more creative with the way that we run the ball, and hopefully they emphasize, just getting good linemen rather than getting scheme fit linemen that, may be so-so or whatever the case may be, and kind of making that honestly, that's not even just a head coach thing. That's just like a franchise's, that's a GM and head coach thing where it's just run the scheme that best fits the team. Don't come in and force people to conform or whatever. Get the best players that you can possibly afford and get, and then just run the scheme that's best going to fit them. I know you mentioned, is it Donatel?
I think so.
Yeah.
If I'm saying it wrong, correct me.
No,
But
for a while there, every time I said it, I thought it was just Dontel, but I think I read it and it was Donatel, and I go back and forth with it because I think I have some type of mental disorder when it comes to reading things. But Donatel's probably not going to come in and just immediately say this is a 3-4 defense now. Everyone, get with it or get out. He's probably going to come in and slowly transition the Vikings into that style of a defense. Well, Danielle Hunt, the edge rushers are probably going to rush standing up. That's probably the biggest change we're going to see. Other than that, it's going to be 4 guys on the line, 2 linebackers, and then five defensive backs, and that's the nickel set, and that's what Mike Zimmer. And like it's just the difference between handing the dough or standing up. And it'll be interesting to see how creative the defense gets. But like you said, and this is going to segue us into what I want to do next, which is talking about the 2022 NFL Draft. No mock drafts from Load the Box quite yet. We're going to get there. We'll give it a little time just because this team has so many question marks. We don't want to throw our first mock draft out there and it just be completely trashed in a week whenever the Vikings trade Cousins or they cut Thielen or whatever the case may be. So moving into the next like little topic that we want to get into, we're going to try to introduce like Load the Box's draft risers. These are guys that we see that have great potential in this upcoming draft. And tonight we're kind of taking the easy way out. We're both taking, I think, regular first round talents, guys that undoubtedly are going to go on day one of the NFL draft. But as this progresses, I don't know, as this segment continues, I'm going to talk about Bailey Zappi eventually and talk about, how he's my guy. And I think he's going to be a quality Case Keenum style backup quarterback at some point. And how, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm sure Jack's got guys on, day 2, day 3 that he's in love with too. But I've talked for long enough. Jack, I'm going to let you go into your draft, Lizo, because if you didn't pick this guy, I would. You kind of got me on him this morning. And then I spent my day at work listening to people talk about him. And then I spent my lunch break watching like just highlights and film of him. And I'm a big fan. So go ahead and tell the people about him.
Yeah, it's not going to be... If you want to hear more, I'll just say this. Make sure you start tuning into the show around the draft time because we will dive headfirst into this and we'll talk a lot more about this stuff. But like you said, he is a first-round talent. In my opinion, probably the biggest position of need for this team. Close your ears, Mike Zimmer haters, because, yes, I'm saying the Vikings should draft another cornerback in the first round, even though Mike Zimmer isn't here. There's some big names, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley. Those are kind of the consensus 1A, 1B, or 1 and 2, however you want to put that. A guy that has skyrocketed up my boards. I think I saw a mock yesterday, I believe, that had him coming to Minnesota. Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of the University of Washington. The first word that I wrote down, it's in all caps when I was kind of starting to watch him, is just dog. And I absolutely love cornerbacks that I can explain like that because there's cornerbacks that are really sticky in coverage, but they come into the league and they're just, yes, they might be good in coverage, but watching them tackle, it's brutal. Trent McDuffie does not have any fear in run support or tackling the guy running across the field. And I love that. That's one of my favorite traits in good cornerbacks, even though it might not be the most important. If a cornerback can come flying downhill and pop you in the mouth, that is my favorite trait. It's entertaining to me. I think that's why this fan base has such a strong love for Antoine Winfield Sr. because he was always a willing tackler in the run game. And I absolutely love that. And I say this, he's not bad in coverage. He's sticky in coverage. You can play man coverage. You can play zone coverage. I like this kid a lot. He runs under a sub 4.5 40-yard dash. Obviously, we'll have those numbers probably exact when the combine comes out. But he's a guy that I think will be there for the Vikings at 12. And if one of the other two or both corners go in front of them, I still think it's a huge position of need. And I don't think it would be that much of a reach for the Vikings to draft him at 12. And like I said, I was talking to you a little bit about him this morning. You watch him on film. He's just exciting to watch. He's got a great nose for the football. And that is what, in my eyes, makes a perfect cornerback. I've said that. You can go back and listen to any of our draft shows over the last couple of years. I'm talking about cornerbacks and their willingness to tackle. That's just something that it sticks with me. If I see that on film, I'm automatically drawn to that guy. And it's a huge bonus that he's sticky in coverage. He's a great athlete. He's got fluid hips as well. So Trent McDuffie, that is my prospect of the week. Quick riser, and I would not be overly shocked if the Vikings took him at 12.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I was tempted when you text me that to just be like, yeah, no, like that we're just going to do this as a show this week. And then I would give mine, but I was like, no, I'll give a guy too. And and the reason I wanted to do this segment of the show now instead of saving it for last was because the guy I'm talking about is the Greek freak. It's George Karlaftis. And the reason I suddenly I was hit with inspiration. You watch this guy play, and he's not the bendiest, athletic. Like he's athletic, he's very strong, but he's not the bendiest like speed rusher archetype if you want to talk in Madden terms. But what he does have is an incredibly high moto, as well as just, pure unadulterated violence when it comes to power rushing. And with the Vikings, moving to a 3-4. You remember the Texans? They had a like an outside like an end pass rusher who would move inside and outside, who was really kind of not bendy, but was incredibly strong and just incredibly violent whenever it came to power rushing. And a lot of, his brother just tied the sack record. So, it's J.J. Watt. And I'm not saying he is J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt set a pretty high bar. He was playing at an unbelievable level before injuries kind of slowed him down. But I am saying that, I think the comparisons are there to be made. When you look at the way he plays, the strength that he has, and also just the style of pass rush that you're going to get. One of the reasons why he's rising up my board, other than the fact that I feel like when I started doing mock drafts like wild card weekend, he was going top 5 consensus. Now I do mock drafts and he's falling to 18, and I don't really understand why he's plummeting. He hasn't done anything bad. It's not like he shot somebody. He's just falling down draft boards. I guess other guys are impressing and moving up. So if the NFL goes the way that the Draft Network and Pro Football Focus and all of the bigger mock draft machines are thinking Karlaftis is going to go, I think the Vikings should absolutely. 12 would not be a reach, in my opinion. He's one of those guys that starts off, the draft season kind of high and slowly gets overtaken by other people that are making headlines and doing crazy things. And that could absolutely play to the Vikings' benefit as he continues to tumble down. We end up getting a pass rusher that crucially will set the edge in the run game, which is something I think the Vikings have lacked. And I know, Jack, you touched on that last week. But they also get a guy who is going to, he's not a schmuck when it comes to rushing the passer. We're not getting Linval Joseph levels of pass rush where it's basically not there. And but hey, at least he's going to stop the run for us. So George Karlaftis is my quick riser. I think we'll try and do this again the next time we do a show. But Jack, now it's time to put on your softest pair of shoes. Try and shed as much weight as you can because we're about to walk on some eggshells as we discuss the Vikings' future and the interest that has popped up from one, I would argue, top 5 quarterback on the field.
Agreed.
Deshaun Watson. He said that 2 teams that are on his radar as he, considers who he would waive his no trade clause for are Tampa Bay and Minnesota. And it's crazy. It feels like we just got called out WWE style by somebody, and obviously, it's polarizing. Obviously, you can't have this conversation without at least mentioning the 22 sexual misconduct / assault allegations he's facing in civil suits. It doesn't look great. We talk about oblong footballs on this show, but yet it's something you have to bring in. It's not like he, voted for one president or the other. He allegedly did awful things to many women. You have to take that into consideration. My opinion on it is and I'm just going to say it like this. I don't have one until these lawsuits get settled and are put away. Things will leak out. We'll find out what exactly happened. And you also have to know what kind of a suspension he's looking for. And then you have to know what kind of compensation the Texans are looking for. If they don't want Kirk Cousins, deal's not happening. I'm not giving up 3 first-round picks. Maybe I would. I don't know, because we'd still get one back for Cousins. But who knows? But I think that you can't really have an opinion on this until he is found innocent or guilty in these cases. But strictly on the field, and we both agree on this, he is a significant upgrade from Kirk Cousins. He just is. I mean, he just is. He's more consistent. He's more dynamic. the offensive line could have the worst day and he's just going to make things happen because he's more mobile. He in every way on the field, I think Deshaun Watson is a better player than Kirk Cousins. But then off the field, you obviously have to factor that in. Jack, I want to get your take on the Deshaun Watson news because it actually surprised me if it's the same as it was this morning via text message.
No, I've gone back and forth on it, and I think you put this in a very good perspective. You go and you look beyond the allegations. Like, let's put that aside for a moment. Obviously, that is a huge talking point. Obviously, Vikings have to do their due diligence with figuring out, hey, what's the suspension's going to look like? Are these allegations legit? There's a lot of stuff that still needs to play out. I'll start by saying this time, or it wasn't this time, whenever it was last year when they were talking about Deshaun Watson wanting out of Houston, the Vikings weren't on his list. And you know why? Because they had a head coach in Mike Zimmer who was playing an old school style of football and wasn't necessarily willing to have his offense go out and do great things. I'm not saying he didn't want his offense to do great things, but it was held back a little bit by Mike Zimmer. That's been made pretty obvious. Now there's this shiny new head coach in Kevin O'Connell, and this ties in very well. Now he's like, you know what? They have Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and somewhat improved offensive line, Irv Smith Jr. They have all these weapons up here in Minnesota, brand new practice facility, brand new stadium. Like, it's a good spot to go. And that speaks volumes. I think that's pretty cool that a top 5 quarterback would want to come to Minnesota. Like I said, all the allegations aside, if they can get to a point where he's proven innocent, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I don't want to speculate on that stuff because that's very serious stuff, obviously.
Absolutely.
But if that can get to that point, I don't see how you don't at least explore the trade option if you're Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, because it worries me a little bit. I think the trade concept that we talked about originally on our show earlier, and we can kind of bounce these back and forth off one another, was Kirk Cousins and a first-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year. I said, say they come in and they get their hands on this roster and they're like, you know what? And this very well could not be the case. I'm completely just spitballing here, but they come in and they're like, you know what? We need to get as much cap space as possible. And we know this year it might be a step backwards before we can take a step forward. What if we trade Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter to Houston, where they get a quarterback, they get a generational type pass rusher, and they keep their first round pick this year? I think I'd be in more favor of that, depending on how the coaches feel coming in, and if Danielle Hunter is necessarily going to fit schematically what they're trying to do. It sucks to say that, and if you're listening to this pounding on your table, yeah, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Just talking about losing some of these guys that have been like built this foundation. That Mark Wilf said in his press conference that he wants to hire a GM and a head coach that's going to take the foundation that Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman gave this fan base and blossom it into an actual flower. Let it become something more. And I think that is why they hired the way they did with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell. And I think it would be insane to me to not explore those trade options. I think Russell Wilson's another name. We're hearing rumblings about a Kyler Murray. I think the Vikings have to do their due diligence, not only with Deshaun Watson, the civil lawsuits against him, but all the quarterbacks across the league. They're going to be looking into this. I know they were looking into it a little bit last year, kind of seeing what they had. We heard from the Wilfs that there was pressure from ownership down to get a quarterback in that room. I think there's influence on why the Kellen Mond pick happened. There's influence as to why we were hearing, hey, the Vikings are going to go after Justin Fields. I don't know if this ownership group believes that Kirk Cousins is the answer. And I've made this very obvious. I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins can win a Super Bowl. I think he has the capability to do so. Having said that, I don't understand the portion of the fan base right now that are saying Kirk Cousins, this team can win now. What team are you looking at? Because I don't think this team can win now. Looking at the defensive roster, looking at the cap space, there's cap casualties on the defensive side of the ball. It seemed like 100 different guys that were on one-year contracts last year that Mike Zimmer brought in, and it still didn't really get his defense to the level that they were trying to get it to. So I think change is needed, and change, when I say the word change, that can happen at any single position on the football field. There is not a starter on the 22 guys that are starters that are safe if your name's not Justin Jefferson, quite frankly. I think Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw are probably pretty safe.
Well, I
But
think
other than
Darisaw's only safe because he was such a high pick. I mean, he could still
yeah,
be a bust.
you're not gonna. Yes, he could be, but they're not gonna say, you know what, screw this left tackle on a rookie deal that showed
Right.
some promise. They're not gonna do that. They have two bookend tackles with Darisaw and O'Neal that I think you can build that offensive line around. And then they have a young superstar, obviously, in Justin Jefferson. No one else on this team, in my opinion, is safe, because if a new D coordinator comes in and he wants to get his hands on that defense and bring in guys, he's also going to have to export some guys and get some guys off this roster. So I don't know. I am kind of snowballing into more than just the Deshaun Watson stuff. But like I said, if you can clarify the allegations and that all gets worked out with the NFL, like I said, I don't think you or myself, neither of us are legal experts.
No,
so I don't
not
want
at
to sit
all.
here and try to speculate on that. But strictly talking about Deshaun Watson on the football field, I agree with you. He is a top 5 quarterback. I said this on my show earlier. He had Dabo Sweeney saying that every single team that passes up on Deshaun Watson is going to regret it, because he straight up said, and I said this on my show today too, we can wait for the basketball debates for another day. Michael Jordan is my GOAT of basketball. That's not changing anytime soon. LeBron's not passing him, in my opinion. He said that Deshaun Watson has that Michael Jordan type instincts inside of him.
Yeah.
He is a baller. He's proven. He's won at the biggest stage, not the Super Bowl, but he won a national championship at Clemson. The guy has all the talent in the world. He's a top 5 quarterback. And quite frankly, they do not grow on trees. If the Vikings have a chance at making their offense even better, even though it's been good with Kirk Cousins, I just have a hard time that a new GM and a new head coach aren't at least going to do their due diligence and kind of dive into that.
Yeah, and everything you just said is basically completely null and void. If you know, they say, I think that like all the arguments have been held, and it should be soon that we like get a settlement or we get a verdict in this civil trial. So like, you know, I don't think there's gonna be I'm trying to think of all the legalese that goes into this. I don't think there's going to be a criminal suit filed against him. But like, I don't want to speculate on it, and I don't want to say too much about it either, because I really don't feel like, you know, coming off as you know, anti-women or misogynistic or whatever the case may be. And like I said earlier, and I was kidding, but it is kind of, you know, walking on eggshells to make sure that, you know, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And, you know, it's a touchy subject, man. But like you said, I said it, you said it, we all say it. He's top 5. I don't think it's close. I was coming up with a little game I kind of wanted to play, because I thought you were still going to be pretty staunchly against it. And I was just going to be like, Jack, like Kirk Cousins on his best day is probably the 7th or 8th best quarterback in the league. And he has a lot of bad days throughout the course of a season, usually like 4 or 5 of them. And during those weeks, he's like bottom 16, like he plummets and he looks bad. And he's probably one of the most inconsistent players that we have in the NFL. Like, well, his play kind of just fluctuates. It's never consistently really good. It's never consistently really bad. Some weeks he looks really good and he's making these great throws. Some weeks he's not. Deshaun Watson, I think, on his bad days is like probably 7th. And on his good days, you could argue he's the best quarterback on any team anywhere in football. You know,
I will say they do need to make sure that too. And this is strictly talking about the football side of things again. The guy has to still be able to play. He's got to be in shape. He can't come into training camp looking like he's been eating pizza and fried food every day for the last year either. Like, the guy has to pass a physical, go through the motions, and get that stuff figured out too. There's a lot of work.
Know that he's gonna get suspended. Like, there's no way this civil suit ends and he doesn't eat a suspension. I think if the civil suit ends with, and this is speculation, whatever, if it ends with like just not guilty, you know, no, there's just like not evidence there to prove any of this is correct, then I think the NFL slaps like probably like a month, maybe 6 games, 7 games, maybe half a season on him. If it comes back guilty, he did it. We're looking at like maybe a commissioner's exempt list type situation where, okay, Dunzo, like he's not going to play football again. He, assaulted 22 women. If he settles out of court, then the NFL has their hands tied because you can't declare he can never play in the NFL again. But also, you can't just, if he did do that, you can't just let him get away with it. And that's where the whole settling thing out of court, it becomes kind of risky because he's probably going to eat a year-long suspension at minimum if it settles out of court. And I was listening to Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk today, and all of his sources and everything told him those 22 women, 18 or 19 of them were good to settle because it's not like 22 separate cases. It's like a class action thing where it's like all of them as one are going at him. I think 19 of the 22 were going to settle out of court, and 3 of them they said no, like we want to see it out to the end. And that was back around the trade deadline. They were trying to settle so he could get traded and potentially go play for the Dolphins. And I don't know. There's a lot that's gonna go on with the Deshaun Watson stuff. I will be happy to never talk about sexual assault and football in the same thing ever again. I hate that. That's terrible. Don't do that. Don't be mean to people. Just everybody be nice to each other. Everybody love each other. Unless you're a Packers fan, and then FTP. Then that's just kind of how it goes. Correction, Sean Payton. We don't like Sean Payton on this.
You had to somehow bring Sean Payton.
We got to bring it up because he's going to be the coach of the Cowboys next year, and I hope we get the Cowboys in 2 years.
With Mike Zimmer as his D coordinator too. Yeah. Mark my words.
Oh, God, that would be dreams. That has to be. I don't care who wins the Super Bowl next season. That has to be the first game of the season. If it's going to be Zimmer and Peyton going up against the Vikings' new boss, then you have to put that. The NFL doesn't care. No fans of any other teams will care, but like Vikings fans will be foaming at the mouth, like pointing out all the flaws in Zimmer's defense and yada yada. But yeah, I think this was good. I'm gonna say it now. It's so funny that we have completely flip-flopped. One last thing on the Deshaun Watson thing. I still don't know if you can win paying a quarterback that much money. And we should probably find a guy in the draft. We should give ourselves a 5-year window to win a Super Bowl.
The thing is, it sounds like it would be a little bit less than what Kirk is making this year. Obviously, I think it's like 4 more years left on his deal. The guy is 26 years old. He's not... I mean, that's 2 or 3 years younger than Kirk was, I think, when the Vikings signed him in 2018. So he's a young guy still, and he's got all the talent in the world, obviously, outside of the stuff off the football field. But, yeah, I definitely came around on it. And I think part of the reason that has made me think that way is Derek Carr is apparently going to get like $40 million. So it's like if Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins and Matt Ryan are all getting these monster deals that are $40+ million, Deshaun Watson probably should get more than that. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, those guys, because they are, quite frankly, a tier ahead of Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, maybe 2 tiers ahead, depending on how you have your quarterbacks tiered out. But yeah, it's just the way the league is heading, and you have to pay the most important position on the field. And the good news is the salary cap will likely continue to rise, so you'll be able to pay quarterbacks more and more down the road.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what everybody's talking about is like, I can't remember who it was. Somebody got a $25 million deal at one point, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, you can't pay a quarterback that much money." And now it's like if Kirk Cousins announced tomorrow, "Hey, I'm restructuring my deal. I'm only making $25 million this next season," Vikings Twitter would explode. They'd build a statue of him, and they'd be like, "Yeah, he's our guy," because the cap always goes up and the market continues to reset itself. But I didn't know this, and this is going to be my final thought of the evening, and then I'll pass it over to you to give y'all's and get us out of here. Did you know Pat Mahomes, he signed that like $500 million extension. He bought a large piece of the Kansas City Royals with it, all that nonsense. He only made like $7 million last year because he reworked his deal to be like signing bonuses and pushing the can down the road so his team could, use that $33 million that they saved on the team in other positions. I hate being the guy that's like, talking about other people's money. Kirk Cousins, respect where it's due. You live a very comfortable life. Come on, man. Like, come on. Like, oh God, could you imagine what this team could do with $33 million? We'd be positive for one. That would be step one, is getting out of the red. But I don't know. I just think it's interesting. But that's all I have for this week. Follow the show on Twitter at LTB Vikings. Make sure you get subscribed to the show's YouTube channel. Like the Facebook page. Catch us live on Wednesday nights. I think we got a lot of cool things in store for you, other than just mock draft season and off-season coverage. Next year, I think we're gonna try and shift things to a higher gear and really bring you the best possible Vikings content that you can find in the year of 2022. Other than that, I really don't have anything. I guess follow, the Twitters right here at jhawthorne16. Don't even follow that. I need to take mine off. I don't even have it on my new phone. I never even logged into it because I just used the load the box one. So follow Jack on Twitter though. He does use his, and he's it's the bomb. Everything he posts is just absolute money. I saw Minnesota's getting sports gambling, by the way.
Maybe they're getting our hopes up. At least they're trying to get our hopes up.
Ohio has supposedly Ohio was going to get it starting in 21, and then it was like, by early 22, and now they're like, it'll be rolled out January 1st of 2023, and I'm like, that's like the end of football season. That's what I want to gamble on, and so I'll have to keep driving to Indiana to do that, but.
My brother's in Virginia, and I think he had a $25 parlay for the Super Bowl that cashed him in $400. I think. I was like, he was sending screenshots. I was like, God, it must be nice to have that luxury. We have to drive down to Iowa to do it here.
Oh my goodness. I had some pretty good luck this past season going out to Indiana. I think I rode a 6-week heato. It was like 5 or 6 weeks where I just continued to make money. And the first one was a strictly underdog. I picked there's my cat. The first one was strictly an underdog parlay, and I remember I was like, it's Vegas, the first time with fans. They were playing Baltimore, and they went to OT, and Vegas won in OT, and I whipped my shirt off and was screaming and fell on the floor. I won a lot of money on that game, but yeah, man, I don't know, it's neat. Anyway. Tangents. Follow Jack on Twitter at Jack_H_Day. Follow the show at LTB Vikings, and make sure you tune in or check the show's Twitter to see when we're going to be going live. We know the schedule gets crazy in the off season, but yeah, barring anything else, look forward to the press conference tomorrow. Jack, I'll pass it off to you for your final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have anything too crazy. I've just been. Your cat's been entertaining me. I've really been hoping he was going to knock that Packer Nutcracker off from the table somehow. It's kind of
that would make me a little sad because the Packer one was one of my grandpa's that he only bought to make my dad mad. It was my mom. It was his father-in-law that bought it, so he just did it as a troll. But she's the devil.
Yeah, I don't have anything really, honestly. Like Jordan said, I will say this. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter. We're, I think, 8 followers away from 1,200, which is crazy that we still have follows just coming in regularly and that people support us. So appreciate if you are one of those people. And if you're not, hop on Twitter right now, go over, give us a follow. Going to be a lot of fun content being pushed out. This is if you can't tell, we're more giddy now than we were at the back half of the season because it just felt like the season was dragging on. And there's, like I said at the beginning of the show, there's change, a lot of excitement, and the draft is quite frankly sometimes more entertaining than watching the product on the field. That was the case in several games this season, I think, for the Vikings. So make sure you're following us. There's going to be a lot of good content draft related. That seems when we probably do our best content, although we do more during the season. It just feels like we're more engaged and we have a little bit of a better time during the draft because it's just 2 idiots talking about stuff that they're passionate about. So make sure you're following us. And most importantly, Skol as always.